Hello everyone and welcome to the next tarot deep dive. I only just did the Lust card yesterday, but since I'm feeling pretty good, I thought I'd just get straight into the other one since well, I feel like I'm firing on all cylinders and my head feels clear and I feel quite good about this one. And it's probably the best idea because this one is also quite a big one. So the Hanged Man. Enforced sacrifice, punishment, loss, fatal or voluntary suffering, defeat, failure, death. It sounds pretty bad, but it's actually one of the mother letters of the Hebrew alphabet. So the first one was actually the full, which is Aleph, and then the second one is Mem, the Hanged Man. So number 12, and we are on Thursday, the day of Jupiter, and it is the 12th. So I thought we'll get straight into it, shall we? Okay. This card, attributed to the letter Mem, represents the element of water. It would perhaps be better to say that it represents the spiritual function of water in the economy of initiation. It is a baptism which is also a death. The Aeon of Osiris, this card represents the supreme formula of adeptship. From the figure of the drowned or hanged man has its own special meaning. So basically, it's just talking about lustration and water and cleansing and that kind of thing. Because when you're born, because when you're born from the water of the womb, right? It's in a sense you're getting initiated. You're going from non-existence to existence, and it's an initiation to life, and the die is cast, and that's why it sort of talks about it is a baptism, which is also death. So basically, and that's like the hanged man, right? When the woman gives birth, the generally speaking, the crown of the child is supposed to come out first. And I think that's a really important, as it sort of comes out, vesica Pisces of the vagina, in that sense. And I think that probably has some heavy significance, and that's why his leg is in a 4, which is the number of initiation. Anyway, so yeah, that's a very important thing. So when it talks about death and all that other kind of thing, it's not talking about the death that we usually think about. We usually talk about death of our false self, or even like to know coming into this world we're gonna die, all of us. On a long enough timeline, the survival rate drops to 0. Okay. The legs are crossed so that the right legs form a right angle with the left leg, and the arms are stretched out at an angle of 60 degrees, so as to form an equilateral triangle. This gives the symbol of the triangle surmounted by the cross, which represents the descent of the light into the darkness in order to redeem it. For this reason, there are green discs, green, the color of Venus, significant grace at the termination of the limbs. The air above the surface of the water is also green. Infiltrated by rays of the white light of Keter, the whole figure is suspended from the Ankh. Another way of figuring the formula of the rosy cross, which around the left foot is the serpent, creator and destroyer, which operates all change. So that's actually a very important thing, because when we think of like the serpent, right? And I think I want you to actually turn your head to two things. So basically below here, is like another serpent. It's basically Leviathan. So the monsters of the deep, and then there's actually the serpent, which actually caused the descent into matter, which is like the Garden of Eden story. So really consider that, because this monster here is also causing reintegration with the light, and that one's also causing the same descent into light. It's the serpentine, sort of, serpentine, up, down, left, right, forward, back, forward, back. That's the nature of existence. It's a serpentine motion, largely speaking, that goes from a exponential function into a logarithmic, and then back into an exponential logarithm, which is essentially what sound is when you think about it. So that is the really important part of it. So that's why it's the secret of the rosy cross, and the rosy cross does both. It shows the explosion of the universe into life, and then also the reintegration of life back into the universal mind, or the all-seeing eye. Well, we talked a lot about that one. All right. It is notable that there is an apparent increase of darkness and solidity in proportion as the redeeming element manifests itself. But the color of green is the color of Venus, of the hope that lies in love. Yeah, really important. Yeah, we were talking about love yesterday. In the Lust card. So I do suggest everyone goes and watches all of my stuff from start to beginning. You won't be disappointed. That depends on the formulation of the rose and cross, of the annihilation of the self and the beloved, the condition of progress. In this inferior darkness of death, the serpent of new life begins to stir. The former aeon, that of Osiris, the element of air. Oh, actually, I didn't think about that. Which is the nature of that aeon, is not unsympathetic either to water or to fire. Comprises was a mark of that period, but now under a fiery lord of the Aeon, the watery element, so far as water is below the abyss, is definitely hostile, unless the opposition is the right opposition implied in marriage. But in this card, the only question is of the redemption of the submerged element, and therefore everything is reversed. The idea of sacrifice in the final analysis, a wrong idea. There's an implication of inversion here, and I think that's sort of what the Hanged Man really does imply a lot of the time. It's a form of inversion, as you can see, instead of being upright, crucified, sort of upside down. And Saint Peter was sort of crucified upside down as well. And I think when you consider that Peter means stone or rock, it basically means the descent into matter, and that's why he was sort of crucified upside down. So in the former, I didn't know that actually. It's not unspecific that it was considered air. I thought Osiris was water because it's the Aeon of Pisces. But learn something new every day, I guess. The idea of is in the final analysis a wrong idea. So yeah. I give unimaginable joys on earth, certainty, not faith, while in life, upon death, peace unutterable, rest, ecstasy, nor do I demand aught in sacrifice. So yeah, the idea that you need to sacrifice your life to gain paradise is a little bit dumb. Not to say that you don't need to do sacrifice, like if you want to become like a certain kind of like a really good guitar player, you need to like stop certain things like pointless activities, and you actually need to practice every day. So there's sacrifice in terms of your routine, but you don't need to give up blood, or you need to give up your life and all that other kind of thing to attain joy and certainty. The idea that you need to spill blood I think it's the idea that you need to spill blood. You don't need to do that. Every man and every woman is a star. The whole idea of sacrifice is a misconception of nature, and these texts of the Book of the Law are the answer to it. But water is the element of illusion. One may regard this symbol an evil legacy from the old Aeon. To use an anatomical analogy, its spiritual vermiform appendix. It was the water and the dwellers of the water that slew Osiris. It is the crocodile that threatened Horpakrat. So yeah, the dwellers of the water that slew Osiris. So it was basically the monsters. This is what happens when you go a little bit too deep into like darkness. You will get ripped apart by monsters, and I think that's the whole part of it. And you can't you got to keep your wits about you. And like I recommend, if you're seeing things like sea monsters or crocodiles in your dreams, which are also relegated to Typhon, you ought to actually in your dreams you ought to like take that quite seriously, because I've definitely seen monsters in my dreams, and it turns out that that was a pretty serious message. So never disregard sea monsters. They're pretty serious, actually. Pretty serious omens in your dreams and other kinds of things. This card is beautiful in a strange, immemorial, moribund manner. It is the card of the dying god. Its importance in the present pack is merely that of a cenotaph. It says, If ever things get bad like that again in the new Dark Ages, which appear to threaten, this is the way to put things right. But if things have to be put right, it shows that they are very wrong. It should be the chiefest aim of the wise to rid mankind of the insolence of self-sacrifice, of the calamity of chastity. Faith must be slain by certainty, and chastity by ecstasy. And yeah, that's like basically it's the whole thing of inversion, where we believe like salvation always has to rely on like extreme asceticism and that kind of thing. You have to like become a monk and sit in a mountain or in a cathedral and just pray and meditate all day, and just have absolute faith that you're gonna go, and which doesn't actually help you because you want certainty, right? In order to slay, like we were talking about, yes, insolence of self-sacrifice, which is like people, so, oh, I'm doing it for the greater good of my country or whatever. There's like a weird insolence to it when you think about it, especially when you're responding and calling to someone else up in higher authority, like the Pope or the President or some shit like that. And say, oh, sacrifice myself. And it's like, it's not the same way, you know? People, like, people sacrifice themselves for really dumb shit sometimes. It's incredible. But let's not talk about that. Of the calamity of chastity, I can concur a little bit, actually. Chastity, it can make people neurotic in certain contexts. If you don't know, if you haven't integrated any part of your being, it's actually kind of, it can drive you mad, actually. So of course, the other side can be quite dangerous, where you're just being debaucherous and lusty. But like, absolute chastity is not so amazing either. Faith must be slain with certainty, and that is like, instead of faith and doubt, because faith is sort of implies a belief in the unknown of what's behind and all that other kind of thing. And we need faith a little bit, because without faith we wouldn't get much done, or we wouldn't see the other side of other things. So there's that, but we want to slay it with certainty, always. And chastity by ecstasy. There we go. In the book of the law is written, pity not the fallen. I never knew them. I am not for them. I console not. I hate the consoled and the consoler. Redemption is a bad word. It implies debt. That is huge, actually. For every star possesses boundless wealth. The only proper way to deal with the ignorant is to bring them up to the knowledge of their starry heritage. To do this, it is necessary to behave as must be done in order to get on good terms with animals and children. To treat them with absolute respect, even in a certain sense with worship. Yeah. I think this idea of redemption with bad is a bad word. I can see that with the implication of debt. I think that's actually a part of what's caused our transactional sort of mentality, right? Like we talk about how shitty transactional relationships are, but yet we have this transactional idea with God. When we talk about the things such as indulgences in the Catholic Church, for example, where you could buy your way out of hell, like like that somehow fucking makes you a good person. So yeah, indulgences were obviously a way to sort of be transactional for salvation and that kind of thing, which is obviously bad. Note on the procession of the aeons. The hangman is an invention of the depths of the Inri Iao formula. In the aeon previous of the Zarian, that of Isis water, he is the drowned man. The two uprights of the gallows shown in the medieval pact were in the parthenogenic system of explaining and ruling nature, the bottom of the sea and the keel of the ark. In this aeon, all birth was considered an emanation without male intervention of the mother of or star goddess Nuit. All death returned to her. This explains the original Atu to water and the sound M, the return to eternal silence, as in the word Om. This card is therefore specially sacred to the mystic, and the attitude of the figure is a ritual posture in practice called the sleep of Shalom. there's this idea of, like, in the Gnostic Mass of like man veiled in woman form, right? And I think it's the I think the whole thing about that is the the very centering core of all matter is actually a sinusoidal wave in fire. And I think when I think of Hestia, that's sort of what the whole center is in essence, because fire is masculine, but it's actually the thing that keeps matter there in the first place, and that's probably why she's sort of relegated to the devil and Capricorn. And I think that's a really important part. And also the hermit was sort of related to that too. So, but like the return to her, like to the eternal mother, would just be implied like there's not a man there in the first place. The world's run by women, guys. Got to be careful. The alchemical import of this card is so alien to all dogmatic implications that it seemed better to deal quite separately with it. Its technical qualities are independent of all doctrines soever. Here is a matter of strictly scientific bearings. Student will be prudent to read in connection with these remarks, chapter 12 of Magic. The R2 represents the sacrifice of a male child of perfect innocence and high intelligence. Here we go again. These words were chosen with the utmost care. The meaning of this attitude had already been described, and the fact that he had hanged from an ankh, an equivalent of the rosy cross. In some early cards, the gallows is a pylon. Gallows is a pylon on the branch of a tree, by shape suggesting the letter Daleth, Venus, love. I did not notice that, actually. That is really interesting. I would have never have noticed that. So Daleth and Venus, which also means a door. So hang and sacrifice in order to come into this world through love. So, and that's the Rosy Cross. We're all so like perfect innocence, all of us from the very beginning when we enter this world, and we're crucified on the cross, and that's sort of, I guess, what's sort of being implied here, which is quite important. Yeah. Maybe definitely think about that, folks. His background is an unbounded grill of small squares. These are the elemental tablets which exhibit the names and singular of all the energies of nature. Through his work, a child is begotten, as shewn by the serpent staring in the darkness of the abyss below him. Yet the card in itself is essentially a glyph of water. Mem is the one of the three great mother letters, and its value is 40. The might of Tetragrammaton, fully developed by Malkuth, the symbol of the universe under the demiurgos. And I think, so when it's value, the might of Tetragrammaton fully developed, symbol of the universe is the demiurgos. And if we, how I was talking about sort of Leviathan and the alchemical cross, sort of the demiurgos does actually reside in matter. And that's how we're talking about Malkuth right there. Interesting. Keep spinning around in the illusion of opposites and paradox. You'll never solve it, but you'll get closer to solving it every time. You never quite solve it. It's like Cesaro summability, where the wobble of averaging of ones and zeros and dividing it by the actual number of the ones and zeros, ever so slowly it causes a contraction. You'll never get to zero, but you will get closer to it every single time. And I sometimes wonder if we'll actually ever really return to zero. Moreover, water is peculiarly the mother letter for both Shin and Aleph. The other two represent masculine ideas, and in nature, Homo sapiens is a marine mammal. And in our intrauterine existence is passed in the amniotic fluid. The legend of Noah, the Ark, and the Flood is no more than a hierarchic representation of the facts of life. It is then to water that the adepts have always looked for the continuation in some sense or other, and the prolongation, perhaps renovation of life. And I think that's a really important thing because, like, when we talk about the legend of Noah and the Ark, how God flooded the world, it's actually representative of the amniotic fluid because we're sort of washing away everything that doesn't serve us, and we're sort of being reborn into the world in a sense. And I think that happens with every birth. As we go sit in the amniotic fluid again, we're sort of in the same position all over again. But we're in a different world now. We will be in a different house. We'll have different parents. We'll have maybe a different planet even. Different solar system, different galaxy. You never know. It is in the water of the adepts as we look for continuing. Okay, yeah. The legend of the Gospels dealing with the greater mysteries of the lance and the cup, those of the god Lacus Lao, as superior to the lesser mysteries, those of God Ion and Noah and the end gods in general, in which the sword slays the god that his head may be offered on a plate or disc, says. That just gives me the story of Salome having John the Baptist's head on a plate. This says, and a soldier with a spear pierced his side, and therefore there came out blood and water. This wine collected by the beloved disciple and the Virgin Mother waiting beneath the cross or tree of that purpose in a cup or chalice is the Holy Grail or Sangreal of Mount Salvat, the mountain of salvation. Grill actually means a dish. Graal, grill, grassol, probably corrupted from late Latin gradal, itself a corrupt form of crater, a bowl. This sacrament exalted in the zenith in Cancer, see R27, so it's the same sort of thing. It is most necessary for the student to go around this wheel of symbolism until the figures melt imperceptibly with one another in an oxytocin dance of ecstasy. You know how I was just talking about dancing with the opposites? There's actually a really good thing from China, from the Book of Lies. It sort of talks about, it's called Chinese music. It's like, it must have a natural cause. It must have a supernatural cause. Let these two asses grind corn. We only know truth through mathematics, but even then, mathematics is only an arbitration of arbitration for causes. I'm paraphrasing a little bit here. The Chinese cannot help but that feel that there is only 5 notes in an octave. Doubt is a good mistress but a nagging wife, a good servant but a nagging but a bad master. I danced all night with Faith, and I found her a skeleton in the morning. But when I danced all night with Doubt, I found her a virgin in the morning. So you'll always see that, and we'll have to continue with that sort of ecstasy. Drinking and dancing with Doubt is great, and I wonder what the etymology of that is a little bit. Laurentius has attained that he is able to partake of the sacrament and accomplish for himself and for all of man the great work. But let him also remember the practical secret cloistered in all these wind-swept corridors of music, the apple preparation of the stone of the wires, the medicine of metals, and the elixir of life. All right. So that is a pretty big one. Sorrow ceasing. I find it interesting that it's 4 noble truths. Buddhism, sorrow ceasing, and then with the 4, it's sorrow's cause. Organs of nutrition, nymphs and undines. Figure of a hanged or crucified man. Poseidon. All right. Let's now go to Long Milo Duquette's description of it. Oh, whoops. A bit too far ahead. I'll find it. Yep, here we go. There we go. Let not the water whereon thou journeyest wet thee, and being come to shore, plant thou the vine, and rejoice without shame. So, we will finish like Alice through the looking glass by having the whole pack on our heads. Good night, Harris to Crowley. I have long foreseen the Alice in Wonderland conclusion of our labours, but that, if you remember, what was the signal for the awakening of the beauty of life, Crowley to Harris. And I guess that kind of is. It, like, Alice in Wonderland sort of reignites the beauty of I guess, existence. But like, obviously put it in a very absurdist manner where there's like the like questions such as why is a raven like a writing desk, or the Mad Hatter and the Cheshire Cat? Okay. To paraphrase what I said concerning the Hierophant, R212 is not your Aeon of Osiris hanged man. Neither is the hanged man of the Aeon of Isis. Crowley makes a tremendous attempt to explain why this is so in the Book of Thoth. Please don't misunderstand me. I mean no disrespect when I put the words attempt to explain, and I'm certainly not suggesting that I could explain these things any better. It's just very clear to me that before Crowley sat down to write his commentary on this card, he must have swallowed a handful of, I think I will try to explain the innermost secret of life and all the mysteries of high magic and the universe in general pills. Well, a lot of the stuff that we see is in nature, and it's quite easy, but like you need eyes to see and ears to hear. Like, I don't think it really matters how hard you try. I found with some people, they will not come to the conclusion until until something causes something to break. Like for me, if you listen to me, I sort of actually came to the mysteries through a lot of despair. So, but let's continue. He gives it a pretty good try. He even offers us several very revealing paragraphs concerning the most profound secrets of sexual alchemy and magic that, for those who are interested in these subjects, will certainly be worthy further study and meditation. See chapter 11. Perhaps the reason he apparently goes so far afield in these comments is that he believes that the hangman, historically and traditionally understood, is now obsolete in the new Aeon tarot deck. In fact, he tells us to regard it as an evil legacy from the old Aeon and goes on to compare it rather unflatteringly with the appendix and the human body. This card is beautiful in a strange, immemorial, moribund manner. It is the card of the dying god. Its importance in the present pack is merely that of the cenotaph. A cenotaph is a tomb or a monument erected to honor a person whose actual body is buried somewhere else. Okay, that's new. So that sort of actually does change things a little bit, since it's in regards to cenotaph. Cenotaph, yeah. Be that as it may, he goes on to give us a very good Aeon of Horus interpretation of the Hanged Man, the highlight of which even though I don't have any, he's just acronymized it. I think I will try, yeah. I will try to summarize. First, observe the arms and legs of our crucified hero make the figure of a cross surmounting a triangle. Crowley tells us that this symbolizes the descent of light into the darkness in order to redeem it. It is nothing less than the cosmic sacrifice that creates, sustains, and destroys the universe. Our perception of how we are part of this grand sacrifice has evolved over the aeons. The sacrifice meant one thing to our ancestors in the Aeon of Isis and another thing in the Aeon of Osiris, and now we, as we shall see, means something altogether different in the past and present of the Aeon of Horus. Now, I can't speak about sacrifice with the Aeon of Isis because I don't have any knowledge on that, what constituted sacrifice then, but if we look at history, like, what did sacrifice have to imply? Like dying for Christ and sacrificing yourself for the Holy Land, dying in battle, or sacrificing all worldly pleasure and pursuits to become a monk in a monastery and all that other kind of thing, in hopes to unite with God. So sacrifice, today would really, I guess, sacrifice today in our current era would be more things like letting go of your false and bullshit ideas. Like, seriously. If people can't fucking let go of their own, like, retardation, like, we're in trouble, man. When they're challenged. And I think also another form of sacrifice is to actually do your will and not deviate from that. Like, if you know what your purpose is and you know why you're doing it, you're not supposed to do that. And there's that sacrifice you need to have made in order to fulfill that will. So sacrifice in today's world would not be anything like blood sacrifice, sacrifice of world, renunciation of the world, or anything like that. It would be the sacrifice of illusion more than anything, and the sacrifice of old ways. If for some reason you have not read Chapter 6, I suggest that you do so before reading on. Crowley identifies the aeon of Isis with the element of water. This was an age where it was universally perceived that human life came from woman alone. I actually want to make a comment on that because that is a reason why, because they actually didn't realize that insemination was actually causing life to come about. So it turns out our ancestors, maybe some fucking, I don't know, 5,000-6,000 years ago, were raw dogging each other and they didn't realize that it produced children. So that's sort of where it all comes from. That the birth sort of came directly from God. And that's sort of where that transition with like the virgin birth and the Virgin Mary sort of came from. So that's interesting. The sacrifice was made by the woman on the altar of her own body, and the hanged man was the unborn baby who floated upside down in the water of the womb just prior to birth. Yeah, so the children being upside down in the womb and that kind of thing. The aeon of Osiris is identified with the element of earth, which is sympathetic to both water and fire. Therefore, in the aeon of Osiris, the sacrifice was one of a compromise. This was the age of the dying god, where when a god just couldn't be a real savior unless he first came out of the water, baptized, etc., and then compromised his own body by allowing himself to be tortured, murdered, then hung or nailed to a tree to redeem the lives of his people. A couple thousand years ago, this selfless gesture was a big step forward in spiritual politeness. As a matter of fact, for the Aeon of Osiris, it became the supreme form of debtorship expressed by Enryo. The Aeon of Horus is identified with the element fire, represented by the Hebrew mother letter Shin and the Aeon drum. In the Aeon of Horus, the water of the hanged man and the fire of the Aeon don't get along at all. In this Aeon, Crowley warns the whole idea of sacrifice is a misconception of nature. The gesture of sacrificial suicide is not only obsolete, is downright counterproductive. And you know how I was sort of talking about that before? We need to let go of false notions of sacrifice. The amount of falsehood that we actually do have in our current world is quite insane, people. Like, I could probably, I mean, if I could, I can't, there's countless things, probably over 9,000 things to be exact, on the amount of things that are false in our own perceptions and what we should be doing. And I'm sort of beginning to understand, like, as I do a lot of this stuff, in particular, is that misunderstanding is the norm in our world, not understanding. Misunderstanding and error is actually the norm. So in a certain sense, trying to make people understand even some stuff I'm saying is a little bit fruitless. I'm doing everything I can to try and understand it. And even Crowley tried to do his best, and Lon Milo DeKet's trying to do his best right here, and some people still won't fucking get it. So let's just continue. But now, under a Fury Lord of the Aeon, the water element, so far as water is below the abyss, is definitely hostile unless the opposition is the right opposition implied in marriage. The marriage he's talking about is the annihilation of the self and the beloved, which is sort of what we went over in the lust card, which is quite important. Maybe read that in conjunction with the lust card, because that's actually really good. And the union of the rose and cross of the male and female is the devotional ecstasy that devolves all sense of separateness that I wrote about in the chapter 11. This marriage, as mystics and saints of every age and culture have tried to tell us, is the supreme sacrifice. So, yeah, the sacrifice you are actually making, as I was sort of saying, is like following your true will, which would involve marrying opposites, which gets dissolved into the one. And you become closer to the beloved. That's sort of what the formula. That's what sacrifice actually looks like. Letting go your false self, letting go your false ideas, letting go all of your bullshit. That is sacrifice. Real sacrifice. Letting go of your ego. I don't mean become ego-less, but like letting go your false ego, and then but you instead have an ego that's more congruent and with your will and purpose, then acts more as a vehicle and a servant rather than a hindrance. The hanged man of the Thoth Tarot still symbolizes the descent of light into the darkness in order to redeem, but the word redeem no longer implies an existing debt that needs to be paid. Instead, redemption in the Aeon of Horus is the noble duty of the enlightened to bring enlightenment to the unenlightened. Yeah. Thanks. It's frustrating, man, because, because it's frustrating to talk about this, right? But like, I'm sort of thinking about how I would go about enlightening people, and I think trying to enlighten old people is it is almost futile. Usually, you want to go for the young'uns. I'm not talking about kids. I'm talking about people who are 18 and 20 who are still finding their feet and who could possibly come across this stuff. Because they're much more likely to be the bearers of the future than anyone past 40 at this point, I guess, who hasn't figured it out yet. Please note how Lady Harris ingeniously uses projecting geometry to link this card with other water-related cards. Try placing the Hangman to top with the High Priestess card and the Queen's card. Other items of interest include her stylized Enochian tablets in the background and her use of the color to green inject a Venusian influence. Let's actually have a look at that, how that looks. I can actually sort of see that. So yeah, they're right. But that will conclude that Trump. So I certainly enjoyed that. It was also a very enlightening sort of one again. Thank you guys for watching. Please like, share, subscribe to my Substack, and I will see you guys later.